Hey everyone, it's Mystery here, and today I am talking about Executioner's Stance, which is my favorite veteran ability. It is not the best veteran ability, it's probably honestly the worst, and I'm going to tell you why that is and what I think could be done about it, and then at the end of the video I'm going to propose a little change version, which I always think is kind of fun. You might be asking, why am I still talking about this? I've heard enough about veteran, but I talk about this sort of stuff because one, it interests me, and two, I am very passionate about Darktide. I want Darktide to be a game that has better balance and better parity between abilities between classes because it gives me more options. It gives all players more options of what to play and have fun with. That's why I was very relieved to see that the new weapons they added to the game were actually pretty dang good, because that's just more fun that people can have in different ways. What isn't fun is when you have classes and abilities that are just the obvious choice and people all build the class the exact same way, such as what's happened with Dueling Sword and Voice of Command and stuff like that. So I wish upon a star that we have more options that are put into the game so that people can have more fun with other stuff and I can have fun with them too. If you feel the same way, if you're passionate about Darktide and you like this sort of discussion video, or perhaps you like some of my other content and you just haven't subscribed up to this point, if you could subscribe, I would hugely appreciate it. Only 800 and something more of you guys to go, and we're at 10,000, just a few short weeks till the end of the year, and that's my goal. It has been a roller coaster of the past few months, and I could not do it without you guys, quite literally. So I really appreciate everything you've done, and let's get done with the plugging and get back to the video. Okay, so Executioner's Stance, what does it do? Well, you enter into this stance for 5 whole seconds. During this time, if you kill a highlighted enemy, the highlight continues going. Now, one thing that people don't know is that you can swap to your melee weapon, and if you kill any of these enemies with melee, it continues it going. However, the bonuses, the bonuses that the buff provides, only apply to ranged headshot and range damage, so you're not like getting extra headshot damage out of your knife or anything. It's just a way that you can continue the chain, and I think it's really cool they added that, because it used to be that if you pulled out your melee weapon while it was going on at all, it would just end the ability instantly, and that was terrible. So it's really nice they've made that change. It also does a couple of other things. I think most people are aware that it increases your range weak spot damage and range damage by kind of a small amount, but a lot of people aren't aware that this has a really cool couple of interactions with weapons that are otherwise hard to control. And I mean that in two senses. One, if you need to pull out your weapon and it's a slow to equip weapon like this, okay, you could just activate the ability and you'll instantly be able to swap and start firing. I realize I just already had the gun out. You'll instantly be able to start firing. There you go. So that's pretty cool. That it really helps out guns that are slow to equip. Specifically the bolter is a really big one in that case, but you could use the plasma gun or something with it too. The other really big thing it does is it controls your recoil, and it controls your recoil in a very particular way, and let me show you what that way is, because this is a thing that not many people know about Darktide, and explains why some of the gunplay is a little more difficult than it should be. So watch the spray pattern on this Vrax infantry auto gun. Okay, so you see we kind of went like this and then this. Let's try it a second time. All right, that time we went to here and then we went over to the left, and let's try it a third time. All right, and that time we were starting to veer off to the right. So these weren't the most extreme spray patterns I've ever seen, but as you can see from this short example, spray patterns in this game are random. The vertical recoil is always consistent, but the horizontal is not. And horizontal on things like the bolter or the infantry autogun can go all over the place, which means that if you have lots of spray control skills, like you're really good at controlling AK sprays in CSGO, those skills just aren't applicable here, unless you use Executioner's Stance, and then your recoil is perfectly vertical, which means it's very easy to recoil control and fire on one precise point, which is one of the parts of the ability that I absolutely love. It makes so much sense thematically that this is the weapon handling ability that makes you handle the weapon just better in all regards, that you can put more bullets on the target. I'd love to see a few more buffs to it in that vein, which I'll be giving it in just a second, but that is a majorly overlooked part of this skill, and I would use this ability, I do use this ability, but I would use this ability more if it had a few other quality of life features that we'll talk about in just a second. Let's finish talking about the ability as it is. It also has these two ability modifiers that are mutually exclusive. One of them highlights these enemies over here, these small gunners. The other one highlights crushers, bulwarks, and reapers. Now, it's pretty obvious which one of those is the choice you should be choosing, especially with the way the current game currently is. You should definitely be choosing to highlight these guys. For one, there are way more of these guys than there are of those guys, so that's more targets to reset your aim on. These guys are also way more threatening to your mortal existence because they have guns, and their guns hurt a lot right now. And they're also harder to see, generally, than these guys are. I mean, I don't know who in the world needs the highlight to tell them where a crusher or a bulwark is. I can pretty safely pick them out. But these guys can be hiding anywhere. They can be hiding in plain sight, and then they'll pull out a gun and they'll shred your toughness in 0.2 seconds. So having them highlighted is actually a very, very nice little buff, and it gives you more targets to reset on. Now, something that people often think is that the highlighted targets are the only one that receive the extra damage, but that's just simply not true. As you can see here, we're doing 25% more damage when we're doing headshots with the ability active, even though it's not highlighting them. So yeah, don't be worried. You're not losing any damage on Ogryns by not choosing this. You're gaining more targets to reset on. And then finally, enhanced target priority. This is actually a negative value point. It generates no value for you and only a small amount of value for your team. And the only thing that it does for you is it tells your team where all of the targets are in the environment that you need to use to get your resets. And so like the better team you're playing with, if you did this and highlighted all these enemies and you're playing with a team that's done Havoc 40s, they're going to instantly turn and pick off all those specials and elites now that they can see exactly where they are if they hadn't already. So you already were having a hard time competing with these more skilled players to try and get elite kills and special kills, and now you're making their job easier, which is nice for them, but it makes our job harder because we have to be getting those kills to get the reset on the ability. One thing that has been changed in the recent year with this ability is it used to freeze the cooldown when you activated it, and so you had to get kills in order to regenerate the cooldown. Now it does tick down while you're actively using it, which is much better. So you can keep this thing active more often. The real kicker with this ability is that if you cannot keep it active for any considerable amount of time, pretty much if you can't 100% of the time be in this ability, you should be choosing something else, because it only offers that recoil control as well as 25% range damage and 25% weak spot damage. There's plenty of other talents, there's plenty of other things in the game that can give you that small boost in damage, and you could be taking Shout instead as an ability and have all of the same effects. If you can't keep this up 100% of the time, if you only have a 50% uptime, you're only getting 12% range weak spot damage. It really has a dubious, case for its usefulness, even with the full buff value being taken into effect. There's a couple of other problems I'd like to address with it before we get into my rework for it, and one is that it plays really poorly with weapons that have slow reload times, because, for instance, I've got like a revolver, right? And with my revolver, if I happen to shoot all of my ammo out while my ability's going, and then I need to reload, I mean, I can just barely get the bullets back in the revolver before the timer is up. And this is with maxed out reload speed and stuff. You also, I actually had the wrong thing. There we go. So that's how fast you'll actually reload the revolver if you don't have a specialist kill. So yeah, you'll reload like this. So I actually only have 1 second to spare there to get that kill. And it's even worse with things like the bolter, which takes forever to reload, or the plasma gun. So slow reloading guns, you're just shit out of luck if you want to use a shotgun with this thing, because this thing takes like 8 seconds to reload to full. So yeah, it plays really poorly with slow reloading weapons, which sucks because a lot of the weapons that it plays the best with, from a gunplay standpoint, do take a little while to reload. The other thing that it lacks is any sort of survivability. A lot of other classes, in fact every other class in the game, when you are playing and just actively using your ability, you are generating a ton of toughness. For instance, all of the Zealot's abilities all generate toughness in some regard. The Ogryn is just, he can regenerate toughness off of both his shooting and his charging. His taunting, he's just meleeing through that, so he doesn't need to really regenerate any toughness. He's got the stuff from the heavy attacks at the top of the tree. The Psyker gets a ton of toughness off of both Squire's Gaze and from his bubble and from venting and generating and quelling peril. So lots of ways to generate toughness and fill in gaps where you might be taking attack damage. For the veteran, because this ability doesn't regenerate any toughness or have any effects that can sustain your resources on its own, you have to be taking other talents. So you could build your Executioner's Stance build improperly and not have at least confirmed kill and catch a breath, and be in a situation where you can't actively regenerate enough toughness to survive. You generally need at least 2 other nodes in the tree somewhere to give yourself enough toughness, and this is because the veteran really depends on having Iron Will active to keep his toughness full. Iron Will generates a lot of value for him, and this is another reason why Voice of Command is a Maze Gun veteran, is it is like a stopgap. It fills in the gaps between times where you're getting toughness through confirm kill and through out for blood, etc. By just giving this huge overcap on toughness. Executioner's Stance leaves you kind of out to dry, where you can have a big dry spell if you don't have confirmed kill, generating some kills from specialists. But yeah, it just doesn't do anything on its own. It doesn't have a whole lot of impact that's going to save you right there in the moment. It compares most directly to Squire's Gaze as far as other abilities, but Squire's Gaze has a bunch of really nice synergies with things in the tree for Psyker, and it does way more damage than Executioner's Stance does, and it has a really good uptime too. Maybe not 100% like Executioner's Stance, but you can get pretty dang close. Okay, so what do we want to do about this ability to fix it up? Well, I just told you what I want to see change, which is it needs to have some way to improve your survivability. It needs to have some way to reload these slower reloading weapons. And let's talk about the things I like about the ability, and then I'll show you what I've created. Which is, I like that this ability has the wall hacks. I like in some regard that it shares the wall hacks with your team, but I don't want them to be able to steal and make our play worse because of having that information. I also like that it has the recoil control. That's a very valuable thing, and I love the chaining. I love that the game turns into a time crisis, like a shooting gallery, sort of like arcade machine, where you're walking through the mission and you're just popping heads as you see them pop up. I love that element of it. It makes you feel a lot better at the game that you might be, but I think it could have a couple of things that make it even more engaging to play and help you to do what it's intended to do. So let's go check that out right now. Here we are. Okay, let's hide all this. You can peek at it if you want, but I'll expose it just so we don't get overwhelmed. You can go back and pause it if you don't want to hear me yap. But okay, so this is the base ability, right? So when you activate this ability, it firstly reloads your weapon for you and equips it instantly, just like it currently does. This is something that the ability used to do if you took an augment point, but I think it should just be baked in. This is something that the Ogryn's Point Blank Barrage does, and I have a feeling that they took it away from the veteran because they wanted to give that ability to the Ogryn, and they didn't want to kind of have the same thing, but it just makes so much sense. There's nothing more defeating than swapping, just hot swapping to your revolver. You're like, oh yeah, here I go. Oh, then the first thing you got to do is you got to reload a shot, and you got to spend your whole cooldown reloading before you can even get a single kill. So that is a really defeating thing. So I would love if it would just reload automatically. That would provide a nice buff to weapons that are less used, like the shotguns that could get an instant reload out of that, or the revolver. Yeah, it would also provide a little bit of a buff to like the bolter, and a lesser buff to the plasma gun, which pretty much never needs to reload anyway because it has such a huge magazine. But I think that's a small price to pay for something that just allows you to fire right then and there and not have to worry about, did I reload last time? The other thing it needs to do is give 25% reload speed. This is so that you don't have to have this point tax for slower reloading weapons, like choosing Volley Adept. You pretty much have to have this if you're using a slower reloading weapon, and it makes so much sense thematically with this skill that yes, you are in the zone. You have supreme weapon handling, like you've maxed out your weapon handling skill for this next 5 seconds. You should be able to sling those rounds into the chamber and rack that slide and get it all ready and leveled at the enemy's heads in no time, right? You were operating on speed here. So I think the reload speed really fits in with the theme And it's not like a huge buff, just like these other buffs aren't huge either. It's just something that will feel nice when you have this ability active. And we're keeping that extended duration thing where you can continue killing highlighted targets, just like before. Melees can chain this, but you're only getting the benefits when you're on your ranged weapon, obviously. And then we're doing away with the ability modifiers that make it so you have to choose between two non-choices. It's just going to highlight all ranged enemies and elites. I mean, 99% of players that are using this ability anyway are using the one that I'm using. So the only extra enemies in all of these that would be highlighted are Crushers, Bulwarks, and Reapers. So it's not like you're going to be like, oh my god, there's too many enemies that are highlighted. It's the exact same that's already highlighted, plus those three guys right there. Whoop-de-doo. It just needs to all be highlighted because it's just silly that this is just a point tax. You know, like this is just like, hey, do you want the ability to be any modicum of useful? Yeah, spend an extra point for no reason on this thing that should already do by default. Then we've got two different paths here. So this is structured just like it's just like the Psyker with Telekine Shield, where you can only choose one of the two paths. They're mutually exclusive. But if you want to choose Bolstered Shield, which is, you know, obviously the most powerful ability here, you have to spend 2 points. If you want to choose Sanctuary, which is a powerful ability, you have to spend 2 points. You have to invest in getting farther down, which I really like that design, and I think it would work really well here. So the left side of the tree here, the first point is 30% rending when you use your alt fire. This is on a 2-second cooldown. So what this does is it allows our weapons that are single shot that have normally no armor penetration to use their alt fire, which in this case is aiming down the sights, and they would get 30% rending on that shot. That would make a really, really big difference on a lot of weapons that fire more slowly and choose their targets. So those guys, vigilant auto guns, you could even use it on bolt pistol. You could use it on a lot of stuff. There's one notable weapon that would not receive the benefit from this, and that is the plasma gun, because the plasma gun doesn't need any additional benefit. But the plasma gun can't benefit from this skill because it has a it does not have an alt fire. When you press alt fire on it, instead charges the gun, and this does not count as alt fire for the purposes of the skill or for the purposes of dead shot. I think this will also be really nice because, you know, it's encouraging players to play with probably dead shot in that, so you're guaranteeing that that critical chance. Like, you know, you're using alt fire a lot on these skills. So very cool stuff for that first point there. It also has a 2-second cooldown because I don't want this to be applicable to specifically weapons like the infantry autogun. This guy is one of the craziest weapons in the game. We've got enough damage already, right? We're doing fine on damage. What we don't need to be able to do is shore up our one weakness and have 30% rending while this ability is active against Crushers, right? We can still kill them with our crits, but yeah, we don't need to have 30% rending against those on crazy guns. So this is going to buff the slower firing weapons, you know, the vigilant auto guns, the shotguns, the ones that are at the lower part of the tier. And it'll still help bolter, it'll still help revolver to help you snipe. But the real power comes in this second one here, which is if you get a ranged weak spot hit on an enemy under 50% HP, they are executed. For elites, that threshold becomes 25%, and for bosses, that threshold becomes 15%. So that is that means that on weapons that don't normally have really huge headshot multipliers, like the braced autogun here, normally you're not incentivized to aim for the head on this because it has kind of a big spray. So just aim for the torso. You'll do 160, and the head is like barely anymore. You can see there like 220, 258. Like you might as well just be aiming for the body here. But if you have this ability and you hit this guy and he'd knock him below half, he would instantly die while this ability was active. So it would help out guns that that fire weapons that aren't as effective at getting headshot damage, but you would still want to aim for the head and get those executions. It would also just allow you to be useful to the team with this skill in a way that a lot of other things aren't. Like you might have a fast firing gun. Oh, I forgot to add a thing to this. We gotta change this up. Here it is. -2 seconds duration. There we go. Gonna make it a little bit. Gonna make a little bit of a nerf there. So this would just be something that you could use to just clean up enemies. And the way it would work is, you see how there's a yellowish orange highlight on these enemies when they're highlighted by the ability? It would highlight the ones that are primed for execution in red. So you would know that, oh, okay, I should just spray in the general direction of that enemy over there, and oh, there I go, I picked up those 3 kills. You know, you have health bars if you're playing unmodded anyway, but like obviously console players don't have health bars, and even when you have health bars, you still have to do that damage to them. This automatically ends that fight. And same thing with bosses, it ends the fight at 15%. I don't think that's going to make the world of difference, but it, you know, people will appreciate you having that just to be able to clean up a fight, save them 15% damage, and it generates more value the higher difficulty you play on. I'm also subtracting 2 seconds from the duration of this ability if you choose this node, because it's just way too easy to chain. At 5 seconds, just going around, it would just basically mean you're doing double damage. Like, the ability to instantly massacre everything that's smaller by hitting them in the head at all would be a little bit overpowered. So reducing it to 3 seconds means that you're using this only when you think you can get some real value out of it. Okay, and obviously you don't have to choose this if you just want this one right here. All right, and then up here we've got killing highlighted targets replenishes 10% stamina and toughness, which is something that I think will be beneficial to keeping this ability more safe if you're using it in a situation like maybe you're using it with the braced autogun and you're getting into sort of a melee combat here. Having each of these kills replenish 10% toughness would be very, very big. It would also help if replenish stamina, because there's a talent in the tree right now, Deadshot, that I think is not used because it drains stamina at such a ludicrous rate. But if you had a way to actively regenerate stamina to sort of fight back against losing that much stamina through this ability, it would see some nice play together with that, regenerating your stamina in that way. So yeah, getting some resources back by killing these highlighted targets, and this applies to melee as well. So you can get in there and start to melee and replenish stamina and toughness. You just don't get any of these bonuses at the same time. So this means that, yeah, if you're in a situation where you run out of ammo, you can still get benefits from having your ability active. You're going to replenish more stamina and toughness when you're fighting and you're killing highlighted enemies with your melee weapon, or grenades, or whatever it might be. And then finally, this buff is shared to the whole team in coherency. By that, what I mean is, if you are in coherency with your team and you kill a highlighted target, they all replenish 10% stamina and toughness as well as you. And if they are in coherency with you and they kill a highlighted target, you replenish 10% stamina and toughness, as well as everybody else who's in coherency. This is clearly, based on the icon here, a team-focused ability, and this is a team-focused side of the tree. This is the assassin side, where you're like stealing all the kills. This is the side over here where you're playing around your team, and you're offering them greater survivability by painting targets as like, yeah, that one's these are priorities right here. It would actually kind of like fit well with like focus target. Like you could paint focus targets for them to take extra damage so you can get this. It's a different version of target down here. It would apply to every enemy that's highlighted, and it also extends the duration of this ability whenever an ally kills it. So they're not going to steal your kills anymore. Now you're cooperating with them to get these kills, and it won't like stack your duration to like 50 seconds. It just does what it normally does and extends it by another 5 seconds. But I think this will keep it to make it a more team-oriented ability. So it's not just like, who knows what this veteran is using? I don't even know whether or not he's using his ultimate because it generates no value at all for us. You will visibly see when veterans execute an elite or a boss that just do that last chunk all in one shot, and you will also visibly see when your veteran has this ability active and you're getting a lot more toughness and stamina back while you're in a melee fight because you're killing elites and stuff. So I think this sort of change is the sort of change that the skill needs to be more applicable in the current meta, as we're getting more aggressive, we're getting more skilled at the game, and yeah, I think it looks cool. Let me know what you think in the comments. Maybe there's something I missed out on. Please also let me know if I stole your idea, because a ton of you guys in the last video had great ideas that you left in the comments, and I totally just nicked those. I think specifically the 30% rending one was one of the ones that I saw in there on the alt fire. I thought that was really clever. So whoever that was, I really appreciate you putting that in there for me to steal it and put it in my video, so everyone thinks I'm really smart and stuff. Anyway, guys, I really appreciate y'all for watching, and yeah, cool. Thanks, guys. Bye. Have a good night.